entire movie, then why are you actually tripping like what I'm doing is a big deal?
That's what it is, you know. So we live.
All right, sir, we are officially live. You may take the mic, Tommy.
All
So
right.
you.
So this is 50 Shades of Red, and I'm Uncle Tommy. I'm stepping in for my niece Naomi Menhaj. And just to give you just a little bit of background on me, my disciplines are in psychology and statistics, working on my MA with behavioral analysis and counseling and things like that. And I now let everybody else just go ahead and chime in and introduce themselves.
You can go ahead, Cordell.
Sure. I wasn't expecting to be on the panel. Can't really see my dark ass. My name is Court. I'm from New Jersey. I'm a data analyst. Uh, yeah, and I'm a libertarian.
All right. Well, I'll briefly introduce myself. Like I said, yeah, Saji. I'm just gonna go quick tonight. Yeah, this Saji. I'm just co-hosting tonight. I'm gonna let my man Tommy be in the driver's seat. I guess you could say my background is in education and transportation, and I'm a libertarian as well. So, it's all on you, sir. Go ahead.
All right. What, I kind of lost my train of thought listening to you. Oh, I just want to say season's greetings to everybody in this holiday and to have everybody to have a safe one. Um, the topic tonight is prison reform. As you know, they had the Prison Reform Act, and it was passed by Trump signed off on it. And I guess what we're going to touch on a lot of this evening is the Reform Act, the particulars of it, prison reform in general. Both sides, Democrat and Republic, chimed in on it. It was presented from what I understood some years back, but it's solidified now, and what effects it'll have on the prison population as you know. Let's see here. Let's open notes. You know, the first Senate number 2724 was done by Richard Durbin, who was a Democrat in Illinois. He introduced the bill in April 19th of this year, and the action was on the same day. The bill was read twice, and it was referred to committee on the Judiciary panel. Now, another bill from the House was done by Doug Collins. He's a Republican from Georgia. He introduced the bill on July 21st, 2017, and the latest action of that one was on September 6th of the same year. He referred to subcommittee on crime, terrorism, homeland security, and investigation. And the last one was a mandatory minimum reform act of 2017 by Maxine Waters. The action was in the House on September 28th of 2017. It was referred to subcommittee on the same thing, crime, terrorism, and homeland security and investigation. And just for everybody listening, and just for clarity, um, it goes through what's called the First Step Act. And what I found out is just the First Step Act rather, is an acronym for, let's see where I got this at. It's the it's called the First Step Act, and it means the formerly incarcerated re-enter society, transform safety, transitioning every person act. That's what that means. And it's designed to reform. And what stood out with me, it says it's designed to reform on a federal prison system. And I didn't know if that just narrowed it down to federal inmates. Like we were talking about earlier, Solomon, I shared that
Mhm.
with someone as I was going through the research, and they thought maybe it was about race. Because their attitude was it's more in the federal system, there's more Caucasian inmates than it is any other uh, any other race. And they had four. What I found in my research, it had Asians, Black, Native Americans, and white. Asians make up 1.5%. Blacks make up 38.1%. Native Americans 2.3%, and Caucasians make up 58.2%. But that's in the federal system. So that was explaining to him. I said that's 13% of the populace, but overall through this country, we we over as people of color overpopulate the prison system. So I was wondering, what do you guys think on this? As far as is it narrow to the federal system, or is this? I couldn't really find anything to see if it was inclusive, because it doesn't really state when you look in the media if it's the federal system or if it's just prison in general. And I guess it's designed for the overcrowding aspects and things like that, and for crimes that aren't violent, that inmates can get lighter sentences or get into alternative programs for rehabilitation. And that's what I found out. And even in the overall prison system statistics, females make up 7%, and of course males make up 93%, which sounds about right. Obviously there are more men in jail than there are women. And it's designed to improve conditions inside the U.S. prisons, and it's an implementation and an alternative to incarceration. So, anybody want to chime in, or?
Yeah, you said that. I think you're asking, is the bill that was passed, is it about federal, or were you asking about federal mandates? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I've been waiting on, I guess, because normally what they'll do is the White House will release a like a presser, and then you can actually look at the actual bill. I haven't seen the actual bill on the WhiteHouse.gov website yet, but some of the things that were talked about in there, they said they reduced some mandatory minimum drug sentencing. Right. Is another part of it that I heard that was in it, but when you try to find information about, well, what specifically are you referring to, they don't have the actual bill online yet so that you could do it. But give me that demographic statistic again, because I was trying to I couldn't find my pen in time. What was the statistics on the demographics of prison?
Well, first, U.S., and I guess everybody really knows this, that the U.S. Locks up more people than any other country in the world, statistically speaking. But they had four races here. They had Asian, Black, Native American, and white. I guess they're the four that are the primary races that incarcerated. And Asians go to prison 1.5%. Blacks are 38.1%. Native American is 2.3%, and white is 58.2%. But that's for the federal system. Because I refuse to believe that overall that the prison system is overly populated by whites. But some people say that's probably accurate statistics for all prisons.
Well, I guess, but then I guess with that statistic, I think you only have 4 choices. So I think in that statistic, you have the 38% or the different percentages you have. I guess like you gotta look at, there is no Hispanic percentage in yours, right? It's only Black, white, Asian,
and Native American.
And Native American, yeah. So there is no Hispanic representation on it.
Yeah, and so that's what surprised me, because I would assume as a minority that they would have included Hispanics as well. Native Americans surprised me because I guess just you really don't hear about a lot of. I'm not saying Native Americans don't go to prison, but it's just a statistic that jumped out that I thought, wow, Native American at a percentage of 2.3. I mean, all.
Oh, and then just for reference, where are you getting these statistics from?
I went into a site online, a site online of prison statistics.
Okay.
Looking at the overall statistics I was trying to find if the federal system. Well, when I was discussing this with someone else, that they were saying, yes, more white. There are more whites. Their whole position was that whites go to federal prison more than blacks do. Therefore, if this act passed, which it did pass, that it was geared towards leniency towards white inmates as opposed to black inmates in the federal system. And
so their assertion was that the bill was only passed so we can get whitey off.
Right. In a nutshell, that's what it is. Because this person was saying, well, in the federal system, whites go to prison more than, because of the type of crimes they do, I assume.
And also because they make more of the population. Right. Or is this adjusted for the population, for population proportionality?
Right. But overall, I couldn't find stats on an overall prison statistic as far as race and culture and all that goes. I really couldn't find it. And I looked pretty hard to try to find it to get the overall numbers. I'm sure it's out there. I just couldn't find it. But when I was reading about this particular reform, it seemed to, as far as the definition goes, that it was about federal. It's designed because it said it's designed to reform the federal prison system. And I thought that maybe that's just the definition that was put out. Doesn't mean that doesn't affect all prisons, and all, everywhere in the country. So, but that jumped out at me, and I kind of highlighted that and thought, well, is it geared towards that? But as Solomon was saying, the particulars aren't out. It's just a real sketchy platform at this point. I don't have all the data on it. I'll probably find out as I go because it's an interesting thing to learn about. So, but I don't know.
Yeah, just one thing that I always kind of like to point out, even though I think some of these things are necessary. I think that I don't, and even though I know we're kind of talking about it right now, I don't. Even though I understand the hypothetical reasoning behind it, but I feel like when you discuss prison reform and when you discuss a topic like this, it always kind of sort of just jets to race. If you notice that kind of sort of, it always gets injected to the conversation, and it always causes you to kind of sort of take a side on something. To me, like, once again, it kind of goes back to the unemployment numbers or any sort of thing that you want to view as positive, right? If you're saying there is injustice in the criminal justice system and we're addressing that, then I think that's a good thing. But if you notice, even though we're just doing the statistics or whatever the case may be, but the conversation around this is not about something good that was done for criminal justice. It's about, see, Black people, Trump cares because he's trying to reform the prison system. You see what I'm saying? It's not just like, okay, we understand that if you smoke crack and you do powder cocaine, there are two different sentences that get levied by the criminal justice system, which is ridiculous. Right. You know what I mean? It's like saying if spinach was illegal, but I put it in a smoothie first, then the smoothie is going to get me a bigger crime than if I just eat the straight leaf. It doesn't make any sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a really, really dumb law, and it's a really, really dumb minimum sentences. But the way that we look at it is always kind of comes back to this. Well, let's fix the inequality in the law itself, in the substance itself, right? It doesn't make any sense. It's like, if you smoke marijuana, right? And if you were had marijuana in an edible versus if you smoke marijuana in a blunt, should you have a different sentence for how you consume the same basic product? It doesn't make any sense. So when you start to work out those different types of, just regardless of how you feel about the law, if you just take out the inequality in the law, it makes sense. But it always comes back to this: we're doing prison reform. Look, he cares about minorities because guess what? Minorities go to prison. See what I'm saying? It always comes back to something like that instead of just, let's just fix the inequality of the law and let's discuss what he's actually doing. Have you kind of noticed a little bit of that?
Yeah, and that's what kind of raised my brow when I read it was federal. Now and again, it's what was stated in the research that I did. It doesn't necessarily mean it excludes. It can't possibly exclude all of the other the prison system overall in this country, and just gravitate towards federal prison. I'm pretty sure. And as I'm looking on the screen now, it said, "Oh, that's something else." But it was interesting when I said that and I shared it with that person. And their input was, well, if it's federal, it's geared towards white, and whites will get a break, and we'll still, and minorities will still stay in jail doing the sentences that they're doing, and because it's mandated for the strength of the federal prisons, it's not going to benefit the other systems. But as you said, we don't know. It was interesting because, well, also what I found out centuries ago, of course, in different countries and different environments, you're going to have different types of justice. There was a British guy named John Howard, and he was a reformer, and he's the one that. But I guess everybody just, from what I read, everybody when they were doing prison systems, they just piled everyone in one room or whatever it is, and he thought that would be toxic, which I would assume that it is, because you have all these different personalities. Everybody is accused of being criminals, so forth and so on. So he as a reformist, had the Howard League for Penal Reform, and he implemented that so that way inmates could either be two to a cell or have a single cell, and it wouldn't be the congestion, and you wouldn't have to deal with the personality that's in there. But what's going on here in the United States is we still have 2 or 3 people to a cell. It is overcrowded, and I guess they never, not looking down the line and seeing how this would turn out, that the prisons will be overcrowded as they are. And I believe years ago, when overcrowding had taken place, they had started a program to release people that aren't violent felons and things like that, depending on the sentence.
Violent offenders.
Yeah, violent offenders. So they would release them by the flocks, from what I remember. I don't know. I can't recollect how far back that was, but they were just letting flocks and flocks of people out due to the overcrowding. I often wondered, with this reform, would people attempting criminal behavior assume, well, if I do this, they'll probably let me out? Would it restructure the attitudes and behaviors of people looking to do crime, as opposed to what's going on now? That's one thing that piqued my interest. You got the person that say, well, I won't get a heavier sentence for slinging dope today with this reform as I would have maybe 5 years ago or a few years ago. So I wondered if that, because you got some mentalities and some attitudes where some young men can just do the time and they just look at it as, hey, I'll be in and I'll be out like this and I'll be out like that. And I don't want to stray off too far off the subject matter, because that's just, it's up to the individual. Some can be, repeat offenders, but with this measure, letting inmates get off with certain types of sentences, I wonder if that would make an attitude. I guess where I'm trying to go with this.
Are you speaking more like amnesty? Kind of like for example, let's say you fall into the category of, let's talk about that's the biggest one everybody always like to bring up, the powder cocaine versus the crack cocaine, right?
Right.
Hypothetically, let's say you had a 10-year sentence for crack cocaine, right? And they changed it. And somehow they say, okay, well, now the mandatory minimum is not 10 years, it's 5. You've been in jail now for 7 years. Should you be released? You think under the new law, should you just go ahead and be released because they changed it? Or should it not retroactively change what you kind of went in there for? If you fall under I guess one of the minimum mandatory sentences,
right.
You think that makes sense? Should they do that?
That's an interesting point, because would it be retroactive? If you've been there 7 years and then this law passed in where you would get out in 5, would they do it for the people coming into prison and you only do the 5, or the people that's already done time? Would they retroactively say, you've been here 7 years, would it affect them? So I guess this is the particular layers that need to be peeled back to find out exactly.
Or the other question I always have is, does it work like taxes, right? Where they passed the law now. So hypothetically, if you break the law tomorrow, when does this take place? You understand what I'm saying? Like, when does this law actually start to be like in effect? So when people who can, I guess, are going to prison or whatever the case may be, are actually affected by it. When can they actually, like, when will it actually start affecting like people who are offending after you announce the law? It kind of reminded me of when they decriminalized marijuana in Atlanta, and they made the announcement, but the law didn't go into effect till about another 2 months later. So people were walking around thinking it was cool to smoke marijuana and, oh, I'll just pay a fine, but it hadn't been instituted yet. You see what I'm saying? So I'm like, what's the actual, do we know what the actual data of it is? And that's another question besides like this law is, like you said, they were talking about federal laws. So unlike the, I guess you got to look at the judicial system is still, I guess we do have a federal judicial system, the same way we have the IRS is a federal entity, but how long does it take to implement this new law or this new rate? I don't know if it's a law or regulation, how you would look at it.
Right. And they just signed off on it today. So, you know, the news is going to pick up on it to break it down to see how this is going to affect the country socially. And I guess it's a feather in Trump's cap to go along with it, because it was just really no friction, no side commentary or anything like that. It was just simply totally agreed upon. And like what was stated earlier, it may make him look good for minorities if it's overall effective for all prison systems. I mean, he had to do the math and think, yeah, more minorities go to jail than anyone else. So with this reform, you know, and I didn't really get to research it about it's a reforming act, but is it a rehabilitation? Part of it they were saying is to help to offer alternative programs for inmates. Like if you go to, like rather than do time, we'll put you in this program. But from what I understand, they're doing that now with certain crimes that people get into.
Yeah, I think that you know, like I discussed this on a little bit on my show on Monday. I think that the criminal justice reform or even the prison reform, to me, it's kind of laughable after I kind of saw what happened with Michael Cohen, right? Because on Monday I discussed what he was being charged with and what those you know, what penalties those crimes held. And if you look at, I think he was guilty of 8 counts, right? 8 counts. It was you know, tax evasion for 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 5 years. It was lying on apparently, I didn't know this, but did you know that lying on a mortgage is punishable up to 30 years in jail? Like,
I had no idea that.
30. I looked at that.
That's crass. That is a lot.
Man, I'm telling you, I looked at that. I actually looked at the actual, like, you know, don't quote me on this, but like, you know, where it says like FM -20011, like they I looked at like the actual legal code, and apparently lying on a mortgage can get you 30 years, and I think sexual assault, and it can only get you up to like 20, and I'm like, there's got to be something wrong.
That makes
where I mean, rape is punishable. I might be up to 30 years, but seriously, is lying on a mortgage and rape even on the same level? You know what I'm saying?
Not even close.
Not even close, but I think that tells you something about our penal system, right? Something about our judicial system, because who was lobbying for that to be such a severe crime? You understand what I'm saying? You got to have some serious money to be able to get that point across and say, hey, you definitely need to make sure nobody lies on their mortgage. And if they do, they need to go to jail for an extremely long time. We need to make an example of them, because to me, you need to go ahead and touch that. That should be a fine. I'm sorry. That should be a fine. And the most, if you were like, I mean, if you gentrify, if you gentrify the whole year, I'm saying 5 years, maybe. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's white collar. That's way white collar. Who's actually who's getting hurt besides the super? I don't know any poor people who actually give out mortgages. Do you know anybody who's like, hey, Tommy, you want a mortgage for a house? Cool, man. Just fill out this application and I got you. And then I personally give you $200,000 out of my own mortgage company. And I'm like, I don't know nobody who's broke who gives out mortgages themselves. They might work for a mortgage company, but I'm talking about it's your mortgage company. You can tell people, hey, go house hunting and I got you on the mortgage. No. So my question is, who could really get 30 years worth of damage done to them by lying on a mortgage application? And that's one of the things when they start talking about prison reform that I'm always shocked never come up. Some of these white collar crimes, if I'm not mistaken, this bill still has not addressed the labor, and it didn't address private prisons still.
Yeah. And
labor? What do you mean by labor?
Prison labor. Like, for example, we discussed, I can't remember what show it was, but we talked about, like, for example, Victoria's Secrets, right? Everybody loves their underwear, but a lot of women don't know, like, your underwear being made by, like, inmates. And
wait, is that for real? That's the shit that was
yes.
on Orange is the New Black. That's for real.
No. That's for real, because what you can do is, like, that's why, like, a lot of people remember they attacked Kanye for his whole, slavery is wrong thing. But if you actually look in the Constitution, it basically says if you're a prisoner, you kind of sort of don't have any rights. We can kind of sort of skimp on the Constitution with you. So that's the reason why, like, these prisoners can can basically sew panties together all day, right? And then nobody cares because they're prisoners and they're getting paid.
Well, let me ask: who are those pennies being sold to? Who is it going to? A private company that's profiting off of it?
Victoria's Secret. Yeah.
Wow. Okay,
like,
so here's my take.
Look at the prison being like the factory. The Victoria's Secret factory is where you're from, Jersey, so I don't know, like Rikers, right? Rikers is the Victoria's Secret's factory. I don't know if they make them right. I'm just giving you an example. You see what I'm saying? Like Rikers is a Victoria's Secret factory, and those guys are making less than $1 an hour.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen. Like I said, they talked about that on that television show, Orange is the New Black. I didn't know that was a real thing. Now, that being said, I don't agree with them selling it to a private company, but on the same aspect of it, hardened criminals, people who have actually done something wrong, and they're gone into a prison system, maybe they shouldn't be treated like slaves. Obviously not, because people still have dignity. But little community service, that wouldn't be too bad. Clean up highways and shit like that. I'm all for that. Not anything.
I think
something that concerns governmental function.
Yeah, I think what it is that they're trying to call it reform. They're trying to call it training, like a job training. If you know how to sew this, when you're out, you can get a job in something similar once you're in.
Well, that's bollocks. I think that's bollocks because I mean, you can do that, but if you want real prison reform, if you want like real rehabilitation with that, yes, you can do both. You can do both. Hey, they work doing community service, cleaning up highways and stuff like that, but also rehabilitate them. Say, hey, we're going to have these programs to like tell you how to, do better with your finances, to, try to get you in anger management so you can just be, more chill when you get out. That would be true rehabilitation.
What I understood is percentage-wise, it's 90% for what I found out today about overall rehabilitation in these programs and things, that 90% of the inmates, 9 out of 10 fail it. That they'll go through the program and process, and then they'll revert back into the criminal behavior that brought them there in the first place. So I don't know.
I don't know. It's that reformation counteracted by the hardened prison culture, because prison culture itself is just going to automatically put you into that mindset where you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to be this hardened guy when I get out.
Right.
So you can give them a little, you can take a little from it, but how much is being reinforced in them every single day,
Right. And I mean, you can't not try to rehabilitate someone that's incarcerated. I mean, and that they have a chance to enter back into society. You have to try to do something, but From what I understood, a lot of these programs, they had a lot more programs years ago than they did today in the United States. I mean,
Wait, hold on,
let,
Tom, I'm sorry, real quick.
yeah.
Just to make sure that we're clear.
Mhm.
Zero issue with rehabilitating, zero issue with skills, but there's got to be some zero issue with the guys, with the sheriff behind them, cutting the middle of the highway,
Mhm.
cutting grass, doing whatever, picking up trash. Uh,
Yep.
no issue with that type of stuff. But what I do have an issue with is any private corporation that is allowed to profit from prison labor
Exactly.
is wrong.
Same. Same.
Saying that you're rehabilitating them with a skill, but you're actually taking what they're doing and you're using it as a product, I think that's wrong. And I think that
Absolutely.
needs to be addressed because now you have to look at it. And I can't say what percentage of their, I'm not saying like, for example, like I know I use Victoria's Secret. I'm not saying all of Victoria's Secret is, but they were on I was a list of companies that profit from prison labor. And I found it interesting that they were on there. It doesn't mean that I know all of their products did not come from prison. Let me make sure I make that clear as well. But at the same time, if some of your products are being used by prison labor, then like I said, it is kind of to me brings into
It's
question a
fucked
lot of
up.
other things.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious: is the labor is it mandatory or is it optional for them to work and sew Victoria's Secret products or whatever products for private corporations? I mean, if you're incarcerated, do you have a job and go to work in prison, or is
Yep,
that
you do. I think.
optional?
I think that's how it
Mandatory?
is. You have to.
Yeah,
I think you
I'm
have to have a
hoping.
job.
I'm trying to get my boy on right now because maybe he can shed some light on it. But the other thing is, and the other thing, like I said, that I'm curious of is uh, is another question that needs to be like kind of examined. Mandatory versus optional. Either way, um, unless you're waiting tables in this country, waiting tables is the only job in this country that they will allow you to accept lower than minimum wage to work it, and it's completely legal. So the fact that these guys aren't waiting tables and they're not making tips or anything like that, supposedly,
Mm-hmm.
then like I said, for right now, waiters and like some people in the, it's basically only waiters in the hospitality industry are the only people who are allowed to make less than minimum wage to have a job. So that's the thing. Even if it is mandatory, especially if it's mandatory, but even if it's
Mm-hmm.
optional, the day I do something that is considered work, whether I'm in prison or not, the federal government to this point has not changed and said, you know what, you deserve minimum wage. Because now, if you change it and you make it where they have to make minimum wage, do you still think companies would be trying to, oh yeah, let's get these guys doing these? Like for example, the other most common thing would be license plates, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the thing I've
Yeah.
heard from the past. Yeah, license
Right.
plate.
So if you think of license plates, but inmates are making license plates as well, then it's the same thing. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like a license plate falls into that government realm and it's kind of a manual type of thing, or do you think they should, even license plate, they should get minimum wage? When it comes to the license plate, I'm kind of in between only because the
Look,
government hypothetically is supposed to be nonprofit as well, but we know that's not true.
look.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not for wages at all. It's not a wage thing. It's not about a wage thing. It's that they should be in a program where they're working a fair amount of hours. Not for they're still incarcerated. They shouldn't be. I don't think criminals should be benefiting. I know I'm sounding really harsh right now, but criminals shouldn't be benefiting. They shouldn't be profiting off. When they're incarcerated. They're in a they committed a crime and they're supposed to be subject to the repercussions that our criminal justice system has, as
Well,
unjust
that's
as they may be, as terrible as they may be.
well,
But
that's what they. Yeah,
but
that's what they.
but
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead, go ahead. No.
No, I was gonna say that's how it used to be, and that's in some states. It's still like in Texas. I used to watch a lot of criminal shows, and I used to read a lot of journals or on the incarcerated from a behavioral platform. And some systems are harsher than others. Um, some are easier. Um, where was I going with this? I guess they look at the demographic that's in prison as you should work because all you're going to do is watch time pass by, and each day passes by. So I guess it's a mindset thing. I guess you feel like you're out in the, even though you're incarcerated. I guess going to work makes you feel like a regular person. I assume that's because in watching some of the documentaries I've watched and reading some of the journals, some inmates, when they lost jobs or whatever the contract was done, they were looking like, wow, I need to get back to work. And that made them, I guess the mentality is it makes them feel like they're really outside. You know, they get up and do a 9 to 5, but they're going back to the block and going back to their cell. But I guess it helps them pass the time, whatever their sentence may be. When I also understood that it gained some type of merit with the system itself. He's a good inmate. He was working. He's doing this. He's doing that. Like prison barbers and things like that. You know. So.
But one thing I would say that I think would maybe cause some people to think differently about the wage aspect would be like, let's hypothetically say it's not, if the wages aren't for like yourself, like you can't take this and like the money doesn't go to you. Like, for example, let's say the guy's in jail and he's on child support, right? But they have some of these prison work programs where he can work, 30, 40 hours a week, and his money goes towards his kids or goes towards child support or something like that. Then I think that would be something to possibly look at, instead of having the money, I believe at this point goes to like their commissary. Once again, I'm not quite sure, but I wouldn't have issue if they were, like I said, getting paid an actual wage. And this goes to like, once again, the profiteering aspect. You understand what I'm saying? If somebody is making a profit off of anything that you're doing, then I think you should be paid for it, regardless of whether you're incarcerated or not. Unless, like I said, if we're talking about beautifying, if we're talking about, scraping all the graffiti off of a wall or something like that, then no. To me, some of those community, because you got to look at like to be in prison, in my opinion, means that you in some way let your community down. Mm-hmm. So this is your also restitution, because you got to think about it like this. If somebody took something from a community but they don't put anything back, then it doesn't really do anything. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't fix like it's like if somebody removed something from the community, but then they don't put anything back, then it's like the community just continues with that gap. So I feel like if you use them for that type of manual labor, community improvement, they're putting up fences, they're doing things like that, then honestly, I don't have a problem with them not being paid, because I feel like they took something from that community. This is their way to give back. This is their way to reacclimate themselves to their community. This is their way to kind of sort of make that kind of next step to retransitioning back into society.
Would you be comfortable with an inmate making, say, minimum wage is $15 an hour, as to the person not incarcerated? Because society's going to cry foul, because they're going to be stereotyped and looked at, or they're inmates, as you said earlier. They've hurt their communities or whatever. Mm-hmm. And say if an inmate makes the same as someone on the streets, society probably would not feel good about that, even if it went to their families or something like that.
I think it goes back to something that Cordell had said earlier, and we're talking about benefiting. Now, let me reiterate. Now, I would have a problem. Like I said, let's just say, remember that was one of the platforms of a lot of Democratic candidates, right? And they take the House in 2 weeks. So if they raise the minimum wage to $15, and now you got inmates who are working, 50, 60 hours a week, and they're going to be locked up for 10 years, right? And I'm not saying like this is a lot of money, but let's just look at this. And like I said, I've never been to prison. I'm pretty sure there's stuff you can spend your money on, but at the same time, let's just be honest. Like, you don't have rent to pay, your food, you're basically living rent free for whatever time you're underneath the government's bill. So when it comes to something like that, I can understand what you're saying by a profiting standpoint, because now I feel like, well, shoot, if I didn't, I mean, like, it's almost like if you take your situation now, somebody's going to bring you food every day. Somebody's going to pay you rent. If you got a gym membership, you don't have to pay for that. I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I understand it's every, they tell you what to do, and I get all the rest of that stuff. But at the same time, what are your expenses in jail aside from like a child support type thing, right? Let's say you don't have no kids. Then you're just going to be able to stack that money. And then when you come out, I mean, you could have a nice sum of money. Some people would say that's not fair because it was almost advantageous of you to be locked up. I know how ridiculous that sounds, but yeah.
No, it doesn't. You know,
I think you watched right. I think you watched right over the medium ground solution for that, because you had two great ideas and you just applied it wrongly. So the companies that are profiting from prison work, from prison labor, maybe those people who have kids and have, you know, obligations outside of prison, and, you know, in the interest of, you know, not having children grow up poor, not having children grow up with support, not having them be on government assistance, everything like that. Maybe those people could work for those companies in prison. They could, the government gets they get substantially less, I guess you could say, but their earnings go to their child. But the people who are just, you know, they don't have any dependents or anything else like that outside of it, you know, you can't discriminate against them and say, hey, you can't work for them. You can't just get paid. So they would have to, you know, do something else. They would have to do something else, like doing the community service thing. So I think that's the middle ground to that.
But the inmate that doesn't have the dependents and things like that is going to cry foul. Even in that system, they're going to want equality, regardless if you have an inmate with 5 kids and spouse and all of this, and the inmate that has no kids and no spouse. I think it's going to be an uproar. You know how inmates, and it's not to categorize them, but I think sometimes they feel like, what do I have to lose? I'm already in jail. And a lot of them make a stand, like from what I've read, when they don't get the same fair treatment as other inmates, or the abuse goes on, or even like this reform act, you know, they petition that we've been treated unfairly and unjustly, and you know they want to feel like they've been treated fair and humane. And I think sometimes it kind of steps out of the boundaries of why they were punished to begin with. Some people say should they be punished harsh, or their mindset's not the same because they've been in for an extensive period of time. And I think if you're incarcerated or confined to something like that for an extensive period of time, of course it's going to mess with your head. But going all the way back to it, it's a choice that each individual has to make, because you know there's consequences with those types of actions. If you're going to have on one platform people saying they shouldn't be cutting any breaks, they should do this, they should do that, they should be treated this way, and you're going to have some that says the treatment is overly harsh, because the whole bottom denominator is they're trying to say it's about rehabilitation more than it is about punishment. You know, they took a wrong turn in life, they're in prison, let's rehab them so when they enter society they'll be more humane, they'll be a better human being. You know, and then you have the demographic that says, look, they did wrong. It's like the parent spanking the child. You know, you won't put your hand on the stove because I spanked you, and you don't want to spank it anymore, so I know you're not going to do this anymore. And that same mindset, I think they got in the judicial system, and certain judicial systems. I know, and I hate to keep harping on Texas, but I know what I've researched, they're very brutal with just, and they did this 3 strikes thing and all of that kind of stuff. But I know their system's brutal to a point that people say, "Oh man, no ever commit any crimes in Texas, they really lay it out to you," and they're proud of that there. But out of the demographics there, 60% of the population, they have like 10% Black population. I was saying that on another broad podcast we were on, and 60% of that population is African American in the Texas prison system. So some people say, well, yeah, that's why they're so brutal, because they know more Blacks are in prison in that state than anywhere else, and so forth and so on.
But I guess the last thing I was going, well, not the last thing, but just kind of as like a kind of a side note based on what we're talking about, and even if some of the things we were talking about were actually implemented, right? And I just want to get each one of your personal opinions about it. Do you feel like jail is a deterrent? Like it used, I mean, I don't want to say like it used to be, but I feel like I can speak for somebody like me, of course, but I guess you could say for, if we're talking about the majority of America, not even the majority, I guess I don't even know if I can, how I can.
Okay. I see where you're going with
I'm saying, yeah, go ahead.
Here's the thing. There's a certain type of person who has no rational way of thinking. They can only think in the present. Some people like to think in the present, and that's great. The whole Eckhart Tolle, centered mind kind of bullshit. But there are some people who can't think long term. They can only think of the consequence. They can't even think of consequences. They can only think of what they can gain right now. So they'll play the knockout game. They'll throw a bottle at a bus operator or something like that. They'll do all these stupid stuff because they think, oh, I could just get away with it. Fuck it, I don't give a shit. None. I'm better than that. And if I go to jail, it's whatever. It's just what I'm supposed to do. Like it's just not been around all my life. There's some, and it's a certain demographic. It has nothing to do with race or anything like that. It all has to do with mentality. It all has to do with how you're raised and. These people, they're reckless. I've always said that one of the most dangerous people that you can come across is somebody who has nothing to lose, because those motherfuckers, they will do anything. They will do anything. I don't give a fuck. Hold on. Let me show y'all something. Let me show y'all something. You see this? You see this shit right here? Right behind my flag. Right behind my flag is a fucking bullet hole. A bullet hole that came through my wall because reckless motherfuckers will come and just come shoot guns, just wild and shoot guns anywhere, and just shoot guns anywhere. And those reckless motherfuckers, they will get people caught up and they will get people killed. All right, so those people, prison's not a deterrent to them.
You know that back years ago, they used to have a sanitarium, but now they're talking about that a lot of people with mental health issues, which is really a slippery slope in the court system.
Yeah,
that they have nowhere else to put them but in jail, and I get it. You got a percentage that do have that are incapacitated mentally, but you have some people who are just generally bad. And that's where you see a lot of courtrooms, especially when they bring in a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists on specific cases, like especially with say a murder case. He suffers from this or she suffered from that, and it can get tricky in the court of law. What percentage of inmates who have mental issues prior to going to prison or even develop in prison? Who knows? I don't even know the numbers on that. But a lot of argument, especially what a lot of liberals are arguing, that a lot of people that enter the systems these days they're not facilitated mentally. And I think my attitude to that is that it's just more excuse, I think, than anything. I'm not saying that there aren't any inmates that have mental issues that are incarcerated, and that's why their thing is this is why they behave the way they do. But also they have hospitals, medications, and things like that, like they do on the outside, to treat them. Sometimes you can get better care if you have nothing else out here in the regular society. You can get some good health care in the system, and that's what drives up the expense of that. You get dental, you get whatever medicines you want to get.
So then I would then pose another question, and then I want to get each one of your opinions on this as well, because you brought up an interesting point. What is the purpose of jail? Is it rehabilitation? Is it as a deterrent to crime and breaking the law? Or would you say something else? Because sometimes I think, and sometimes people can say it's a little bit of both, or however you want to look at it. Me personally, I honestly don't know anymore, because I would say when I grew up, I thought prison was a deterrent to do bad things. Like, I remember seeing Oz growing up, right? And I remember watching Oz on HBO, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I would do if I was in jail and Adebisi was trying to get me. Like, I don't know. Like, I was so afraid of Adebisi growing up, and I'm like, I know how people be scared of like Jason and scared of like Freddy Krueger, but like I was scared of Adebisi, man. That little cock to the side, had he used the warrior land, I was like, yo, man, and like that scared me. But the situation when I was watching Oz, I was like, look, this is scary. And to me, growing up, I view prison as a deterrent from doing crime, not as a place where bad people went to get rehabilitated and then work back into society. I thought of it just being a deterrent to crime. Now, as you fast forward, 20 years later, you're looking and you're thinking like you say, with the privatization of prisons, right? And you look at like the prison labor force, and you look at, anytime a political issue comes up, I always go to the base of politics. Anytime an issue becomes political, when you talk about criminal justice reform, you talk about prison reform, I always go to like, it's got to be some money about it, because normally politics don't talk about anything that doesn't have to do with money. So, immigration, if you go to the source of immigration, it's money. If you go to taxes, the source of it's money. So the majority of any of these issues that they bring up always links back to money. So that's why I said, for y'all, that's why I say right now, I honestly don't know. I would ask what your opinion is. What do you believe the purpose of jail is? And, some people would even say, go ahead. I'll just ask y'all, what do you think the purpose of jail is in 2018?
Well, personally, I believe that it is the bottom denominator is profit. Again, you get the cheapest labor, and you get contracts that prisons can get. And if I have a business and I can get inmates to do it at a percentage of what I would pay someone else, fine. And then the mentality that they've run across the inmates is, well, you get out your cell, you can work all day and feel like a regular person, so forth and so on, even if it's just $1 an hour. Most inmates will probably tell you it's just something to do. And I think and all of these private prisons are popping up, and I think we're going to keep seeing more of those types of prisons higher and higher. And I believe those are the ones that pick the fruit from the tree of labor. When they can hire cheap labor at its cheapest, lowest bottom, and give the prison get the contract out and inmates do all of this and at that point, and they set the mindset that, okay, well, you're going to learn a skill and you can get out of your cell and do all this and do all of that. So I deeply believe that the rehabilitative part of it is very thin, and I believe the overall part is profit for these prisons, because they estimate how many people are going to go to prison, or what particular sectors of people go to prison, and demographics and so forth and so on. So they sit and do the math, and next thing you know, if especially like say in LA, where you have the gangs and all of these things going on, so of course they're going to bank on that. They're going to bank at it on it like people are cattle, and then they'll get them to produce labor for these private organizations and companies at next to nothing.
I have to agree with Tommy. I have to say that it's a profit system. Well, actually, I don't even know about the profit system, but I do know that. I don't know about profiting off labor, but I definitely know that the prison itself, the prison system, the building of the prison guards union, all that, that's all completely, totally for profit. I'm with you, Saul. I don't know where it's gone wrong. I don't know how it got to this way, because it's weird. As Republicans, we want less government most of the time. But in this case, it seems like we should have more government, because they're the ones dealing out these laws. All right, some of them we agree with, some of them we don't agree with, but they're the ones who set the laws, and then they don't take care of it themselves. They send other people to do that. So you're going to enforce the law, but then in order to do all of the punishment, you're going to have a private company do it. It makes no sense. So I don't know where the prison system went wrong. I don't know what its purpose is. I don't know if it is for profit, for, cheap labor and everything like that. I mean, this is the first time I'm hearing about, an actual people, making panties and stuff like that. I mean, I think I thought that the license plate 7 from back in the 1920s or something like that was all like kind of flanderized and fictional, but you know, if that's really what it is, and they really are just making, then that's slavery. Then that is just straight up slavery, and we should be embarrassed of ourselves.
Well,
Yeah, but I go ahead. I was gonna
I'm
say,
sorry.
yeah, because what you were saying, Cordell, I think that's one of the conundrums that I've been kind of struggling with lately. You know what I mean? When you bring up, like, you know, if you consider yourself a conservative Republican on the right, whatever the case may be, when it comes to things like when we talk about law and order, right? Because if you're for less government, then technically you should be for less laws, because the more laws you can enforce are basically the more tyranny that, you know, people like to use the word tyranny, the more tyranny your government can force upon you. You understand what I'm saying? So a situation where I've been struggling with this one for a while, because, like, especially when it comes to drugs, because I feel like that's a personal choice. It's the same way where, like I said, you know, we have gotten to this country where we said, okay, look, man, it's okay. You know, you can cut your man off. You can get some titties added on. You can go get some shots. You can take some hormones, and we'll consider you a woman. And nobody has a problem with that. Nobody. You know, when I say nobody, I understand it's like 50% of the country has a problem with it. But when I say nobody has a problem with something like that, and what I'm saying is that's their own personal choice, and they can make it without a problem. You understand what I'm saying? The same drugs that in any doctor, there is no doctor out there that would say that any woman who is taking testosterone, or any man that is taking estrogen pills, that they are healthy and that it is good for their body. No doctor will ever sign off on that. So we know this medically, and nobody has a problem with it. But then, like I said, once again, I'll keep beating this point. But then once again, if you want to go take a plant that grows in the ground and you want to smoke it, then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Government, step in and stop this. And I'm like, well,
get a piece of it.
It's kind of like you kind of sort of can't have your cake and eat it too. It's either you believe in conservatism and you want less government in all aspects of life, or you want less government in the aspects of life that bother you. And I think that's more or less what a lot of conservatives are starting to shift to. They're starting to shift to a specified conservatism, which basically says, if you do something that I don't like, then I want more government here to stop you from doing it. But if I like it, then yeah, I'm perfectly fine with no government at all. Like when it comes to guns, no government whatsoever. Guns is a no government issue. But when it comes to drugs and some other things that, like, you know, people would say, well, what happens if a guy is high on cocaine and he goes on a shooting spree and kills people? The murder part is the illegal part. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it's the same thing. Like, well, what if a guy gets drunk and does the same thing? It's exactly the same thing. That's the reason why murder is illegal, but it doesn't stop people from killing people. You understand what I'm saying? When you try to make something illegal to stop people from doing it, like they say, like, everybody's gonna know the answer and everybody's gonna smile when I say this. What's the oldest profession on earth? Exactly. And why is it the oldest profession on earth? And from what I can tell, it's never been acceptable. It's never been a good thing. And it's never been accepted by modern society. But yet and still, in 2018, prostitution still exists. And people are still going to jail and being punished for it. And, you know, I'm not going to go on a whole rampage, but my faith doesn't want me to believe. And I always tell people this is where you've got to draw the line. You understand what I'm saying? Because we have, you know, I mean, I'm kind of going to tangent here, but if you understand what I'm saying, this is where it always comes to when people want to talk about their moral beliefs and, oh, I'm a Christian, or oh, I'm Jew, or oh, I'm a Catholic. And this goes against your religious beliefs. And I always say, well, that's fine if it goes against your religious beliefs. But once again, if we're talking about from a strict legal perspective, because like I said, I know Cordell, we don't agree the same from a religious standpoint. So since we don't agree the same, how can we have equality in a system that is technically punishing him for a belief system that he does not believe in? You understand what I'm saying? It's like you're being punished for my Judeo-Christian values when you don't believe in it? How can we have equality in a system when I'm trying to punish you for Judeo-Christian values and you don't believe in it? So these are like some of the questions that I ask when I start looking at justification of laws. If you're an atheist, how are you held accountable to Christian laws? It's almost like we're trying to force our beliefs on you when you say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, not life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and believing in the same God I believe in. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
That's an interesting point of view, you know?
Yeah. It definitely give me something to think about. I mean, I know I'm not a socially conservative, but it definitely gives me something to think about when you're talking about, oh, you want to pick and choose. Yeah, that kind of sounds like something leftists do when they want to talk about, you know, their personal freedoms and everything. That's I guess I got a couple things to think about. So
yeah.
What about you, Tom?
You know, I remember years ago where what I was going to talk about earlier with it was called convict lease. Once slavery was abolished, they decided to just arrest people of color on the streets. And what happened is you were arrested for just any type of situation, just for the most minor of infractions, if there were any. And then you were leased out, and it wound up actually being a lot more profitable than slavery has been. So slavery at that point never slowed down. What you were just property of, or at least like property to whoever services you provided for them, and you work all day and all of that. And it was big and booming. And you kind of got the same kind of mindset today in today's prison system with inmates working and private corporations and companies making large profits off of that. You know, it's almost similar. It's just that they weren't paid back then, but you know, I mean, $1 an hour, $2 an hour. You know, so.
Yeah, but I think, and you know, like I said, if we start to analyze our prison system, and we start to think about, like you said, when we start to bring in the privatization of prisons, if you actually start to think about all these things, it always brings up the question when you start talking about the privatization of prisons, because, you know, as a business major, you always have to try to analyze, well, if I run a private prison, then explain to me what's my market. You understand what I'm saying? Like, if I run a prison, my market is criminals, right? So it's one of those hypotheticals that we can all admit will never happen, but it's one of those situations where if nobody breaks the law, and it's almost like if you think about having law enforcement and you think about having the penal system and all those different other aspects of it, it almost comes to think about, what would we do? And I understand society hasn't allowed that, but if you think about like let's just start with the police. Then you have the sheriff. Then you had the DEA. Then you had the FBI. Then you had the ATF. Then you had the CIA. Then you have the Department of Corrections, right? And then you have all the other things that are involved in that, right?
You know what I just saw the other day? There's a postal police. That's
there's a postal police, right? There's a police for the some of your I know, like in Atlanta, we have a police for transportation. Correct. Mm-hmm. Like we got a MARTA police down here, you know. And you come to think of, what if crime was reduced by 75%, and we kind of move into that Demolition Man type society, right? You know, y'all both seen that movie, right? That's a good reference for y'all, right? You both seen Demolition Man?
I haven't seen Demolition Man.
You've never seen Demolition Man? Neither one of y'all? Oh, man.
Is that a Bruce Willis movie?
No, that's not a Bruce Willis movie, man. That's a
Wesley Snipes movie?
Yes, it's Wesley Snipes and Sylvester Stallone, Simon Phoenix.
Yeah,
Simon Phoenix. Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay, well, anyway. Yeah, just even though I'm kind of mad at Hollywood right now for keep blocking my videos for putting content out there. Brief thing that happens in the movie is this: basically society has gotten to the point where there is no guns really. Everyone in society is basically gotten to the point where the only thing pretty much people get punished for is cursing. You know what I mean? Like cursing is illegal at this point, but there really are no violent crimes anymore. And the police force just has like these little like stun batons and things like that they kind of use when things get out of hand. But for the most part, society got to a point where we basically evolved from violence and crime. So my question is, what happens to this entire very, very expensive, I'm pretty sure, than the budget of the federal government that, you know, is another topic that we're not going to get into tonight, but it's a hot topic right now. But all those organizations and things I named, what do you do when, you know, you got a prison that's not full? What do you do when you've got a prison that only has a very small number of people in it? Like, what happens to, you know, does if the market increases? Because last time I checked, there hasn't ever really been a point where there's ever been a market for, I mean, not a market, but there's never been a point where I don't hear about too many prisons closing.
They'll never close. You always have people that's committing crime. Crime is you're going to have people, especially if you are struggling financially or whatever, you're going to have people that are risk takers, and they're going to take those risks. And as was spoken earlier, they're going to weigh the odds. It's always a chance of getting caught, but there's always a chance of getting over. So I don't think prisons, unfortunately, will have to have that issue that, you know, they advertise, you know, the government advertises we have or the government, certain governments in certain states advertise we have a decrease in crime rate went down or the murder rate's down and all of this. But that's where I don't even know where they're getting these numbers from. But as far as it being more like Demolition Man, no, it's going to always, prisoners will always profit. You know, it's going to always be the person, you know, it's just the way the scales teeter. You're going to have people who abide by the law, and you're going to have those who tend to break it. And you're going to have that individual, like someone said earlier, that has nothing to lose. That's going wants to take that chance.
But do you think the only reason why the only reason why we're building more prisons is because of like the population expansion, or do you think it's because we actually need them? You know what I'm saying? I know that's an odd question, but it's like you got to think about it from like let's just kind of take a trip back in time to maybe like the 1800s. Let's go like right after the Civil War. Like, and I would want to know like what did the prison system look like at that time? You probably had a lot of like war prisoners at that time, but like it wasn't like jails in every. I mean, maybe it had been like jails, but I don't necessarily know what the penal system would have looked like at that time. But what I can say is like from what it was then it is now. Go ahead.
It was probably a lot of state prisons. It probably wasn't a lot of federal prisons. The federal prison system probably wasn't that extensive as it was in the 1800s. A lot of blacks in there, though, I bet, though.
I think it was a mixture. I agree with Cordell. I think it's a mixture of both privatized industrial complex stuff and just population. I mean, it sounds crazy, but it does. I'm not condoning this. I'm not condoning the expansion of prisons, but I could see how politicians might run on trying to get funding to build or expand on prison in their property, in their area that they represent, because it provides jobs or projects or real estate development or things of that nature. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying that.
But AJ, I know you just joined, AJ. But do you think that private prisons are a good idea? Having a private prison.
This is one area where I'm like kind of libertarian, and I'm not super libertarian or anything, but I kind of think that I'm kind of in favor of it. A lot of other people might think that I'm crazy, but
it's not that far-fetched. I mean, I was saying earlier that, you know, it's one of those areas where it's like, as a Republican, you should be like, oh, less government. But at the same time, it's like, do we should have government step in at this point, you know? You think it should have step in. But then Saul gave that great point about like, hey, you should probably be, you can serve all through. And, that's something to think about. But still, I still think that, if the government's the one dealing out regardless of, if you want less laws on the books, if the government's the one dealing out these punishments, they should be in charge of it, not some faceless, soulless corporation.
Yeah, my problem, I don't necessarily take issue with it's like having the prisons, having the privatized prisons out there is not really the issue to me. It's more of the fact that they are subsidized by the government, and it's almost like a sideways form of welfare.
Well, no, I'm going to even give it to you from a different perspective, right? Now, check this out. Okay. Now, we talk about government waste and we talk about things like that. So look at a private prison as a charter school, right? Because we allow and we say it's okay for charter schools to exist because sometimes we feel like they do a better job servicing certain populations. So in a case where maybe a private prison is better than a federal prison at rehabilitating prisoners, not having so much wasteful spending, instead of having, sheriffs and things of that nature, they have a private security force and they have their own, however they do it. And they're more efficient at using those same government funds at, doing it. But at the same time, you have to understand a charter school is still not for profit. That's the issue I have once you start talking about profit. That's the issue I have with prison. You understand what I'm saying? Because the same thing, like if you had a charter school, right, that's taking funds away from other public schools and that charter school is making a profit by doing that, then once again, I feel that, I would have a problem as well. But that's just what I'm saying. Like, if you look at a private prison the same way you would look at a charter school, then I think that kind of brings a different air to
it. I actually think that that's a really good point because it's very similar to like a military defense contractor, where there are a lot of situations where we can't send in. Is it echoing?
My bad.
There's a lot of situations where we can't send in troops, infantry to combat situations because of, peace treaties and UN and all kinds of rules of war or whatever, Geneva Convention, all that crap. And so we send in, the defense contractors that the military hires, which are pretty much all ex-military guys, to go and do things in the interest of our military interests. And a lot of times, yeah, you're 100% right that those guys or those companies or whatever that are going on these missions are doing things a lot more efficiently than like the bureaucracy of the federal army would be able to do. And I think that's a good point. But the thing is that at the same time, it is an extension of the enforcement of the laws of the country. And we are a country that is governed by the rule of law. So some aspect of that, I do believe, needs to be under the auspices of the federal government. Like, I'm not going to say that all prisons should be private. I'm not going to go as far as to say that all prisons should be private, because I do believe that part of the whole institution of prisons is part of the whole idea of enforcing the law of the country, regardless of who's being victimized by that system. It might be me. I'm on speaker. I'm gonna get my headset on.
Tommy, go ahead.
I've lost my train of thought. Privatization of the prison system is, if it's very effective and very efficient, then everybody's going to want to get into it. Hey, I can get a private prison started here and put it here and get inmates to transfer to this, and
hey, just interrupt. It's Cordell or Tommy. One of you guys is echoing because we both muted our phone or not muted.
I turned off my phone, so I don't know.
Is it me? Can you hear me echoing? I can hear me echoing.
Yeah, I heard you echo, Tommy.
Yeah.
iPhone 4 and shit.
Okay, go ahead. You're fine. Go ahead.
I'm good?
Yeah, you're fine now.
Yeah. It seems like it would set a model where everybody wants to follow that. You're going to probably wind up, as years go on, having more private prisons than you will government funded prisons. Because they're going to be, because again, at the end of the day, it's good business. It's big business, actually, that I believe that's going to. Well, go ahead.
But then I guess it's also going to bring up a point of, well, where, okay, if it starts at the prison, then my question is, even though we haven't seen it yet, where does it stop? Because hypothetically, if we're talking about efficiency and things like that, what if, for example, a town that's very affluent says, you know what, we don't want a public police force, we want a private police force. And, instead of having, can we, what parts of the judicial system, and that's one thing that I kind of find that's very interesting here, because the prison is a part of the judicial system. I think everybody would agree with that. It's the kind of in phase. So my question is, will we get to the point where we can go to, hey, look, you can either go to public court or you can go to private court, and it's got private judges, and we've got a way to kind of, get around the judicial system, because basically you got to look at it like this. We have, the maximum security prisons. We have supermax, right? And then we have minimum security. We have the mental health institutions. We have a lot of different levels of how we punish people in this country. So how I kind of look at it is, and that's one of those kind of, I'm all for, like I said before, like the libertarian me says, I'm all for private businesses in almost any aspect of government. But I think some things are like, if we're going to have government, and since we already have a government system that says, we have prisons, it's almost like, having a private military. And anything that we can privatize and you can profit from, because I know like we have plenty of private security firms across the country, but we don't have a private security firm who is in charge of enforcing the law. It's more or less like they're a private firm to the private firm is in charge of like bodyguards or like you said, the military contractors. So I think that it's just something that if we continue to allow the expansion of private prisons, can it eventually get to the actual enforcement of the law and just not enforcing the punishment?
Yeah, I think on that note, the libertarian stance is what you said, that anytime there's an opportunity to have a privatized implementation of a state program, you would always want to have that private version as opposed to the state program. The question comes into like, does having a private program undermine the integrity of that institution? So at least as I see it, like I'm for private prisons, but the penal system is a form of enforcing the laws of our government. So at a certain point, does having prisons privatized undermine the spirit of what prisons are there for? I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that question is. I do agree with you that having, private police forces in a lot of institutions would be better served by having them privatized, because that would lend itself, those systems generally run more efficiently and they lend themselves to innovation a lot faster than having statewide programs. If you just
right, but it also opens
an argument against socialism.
Yeah, but it also opens up that accountability thing, like with Iraq. You know what I mean? Like when you gotta look at it like that when we talk about like for example Halliburton. You can go to Iraq or you can go to a lot of these places over there and make $450,000 being a security person, right? You can make good money doing it. But the question is, who do these guys answer to? And the question is to answer to their boss. They don't, like if I went over there right now as a private security contractor, I'm technically like I guess it's not even the technical, it's not even hypothetical. I don't answer to the US military. You understand what I'm saying? Like the general can't really, whoever's the person who's in command, wherever I'm at, I technically they're not my boss unless it's in my contract because I'm contracted to the company that I work for. Even though I'm a military contractor, I don't fall up under UCMJ, which is the Uniform Code of Military Justice. I don't fall up under that anymore. So because I don't fall up under UCMJ, then it's like, okay, let's say the contractors jack up an operation, right? Then it's not the military who's going to get blamed, and it's not even necessarily the company who's going to get blamed. So a situation where if you have a private prison that is going to do that, it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be a private issue because they can't necessarily sue the state, right? Because their loved one, let's say like their loved one dies because of lack of medical treatment in a private prison. They're going to be able to, they won't be able to sue the state for that, even though or they won't be able to sue the state or the US government because of that, right? Even though the US government is the one who controls where they go.
Yeah, it's a conundrum because I honestly don't know the answer to the question because while having smaller government is in general what most of us here want, like when you have private enterprise that is paid for by the government, there's just so many opportunities for conflicts of interest and losses of accountability, like you said earlier. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, because just listening to you speak for that last minute, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I don't want private prisons anymore.
Well, and like I said, I mean, to me, like, and that's the one good thing about having these discussions. I mean, there is no, I mean, we're just all discussing hypotheticals, and there are no right or wrong answers. But I think it's just interesting how, I just always got to say, and I think it's interesting to think about how this even became a thing. You understand what I'm saying? Like, think about, like I said, I was a business major at school, and I got some friends, and I was going around, and I'm looking for people, and I'm trying to tell them, hey, look, man, invest in my business. And they say, well, what do you do? Oh, man, I build and I run prisons. And then you got to go and explain to people how you can turn a profit on what you're doing, because that's what business is about. And no private and it's not like these are non-profits. Like, that's the one thing. I know I made a charter school reference. Now that I think about it, charter schools would probably be under whatever the what is it, 501 status. Yeah, they're going to be under nonprofit, but they're not going. I don't think a prison would be under that same status. It could be, but I'm not sure. So I think
I would agree with you. I would imagine that the prisons would be corporations, and
correct
help corporations, and
but then how do you sell investors to invest in your prisons? And you say, hey, look, we're going to build the finest prison in Illinois has ever seen. Our prisons are going to be so blank and blank and blank that
America.
You understand what I'm saying? But like, how do you sell investors on a prison? Like, what are you selling them?
There are many profitable ideas, many more morally dubious business ideas that have been successfully pitched in this country than for-profit prisons. Like, I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about America is the very fact that idea is pitchable. You know what I'm saying? That you can come up with the idea for a for-profit prison, and you can find some fat cats in Silicon Valley or whatever that got $200 million to front to you to build your property. Like that, to me, that is the like, I don't think if the government pulled out from funding the prisons that they would not be able from paying private prisons that they would not get funding, because a profitable business is a profitable business, and if they're making money, there's going to be people looking to invest in America for sure.
Well, the only way I can see answering Solomon's question is that they would have to pitch the angle of rehabilitation, that these prisons turn out. We all know that's not the case, but if you're going to pitch it, that would have to be the only angle that you could pitch it on, is the rehabilitation part. And crime will go down and all of these things, because we rehabilitate these people from the private prison sectors compared to the others. And I can't see any other way that you could sell it, and people will believe in that. And
I think you just show them the P&L. Show them the P&L. Show them. I don't think you have to make any kind of moral argument because people invest in porn, people invest in drugs, people invest in gambling, and all kinds of things. Even if people invest in things, even though their religion would tell them that they should not patronize, said industries, but they still invest. I don't think you need to. I mean, I think like if you're I think that what you're saying is like if you're trying to pitch it to the public. But I think if you're trying to get investors, you just told them that like, hey, the past 5 years we've made a margin of 10%. Come invest. They don't care. They're not even really going to care what the business is.
Right, and I guess this from my standpoint, if they were just showing how wasteful prisons were, and they were saying this is the money the government, like bottom line is, the government gives us $10 million a year to run this prison. We can do it with 7. So we'll have $3 million in profits every year. And this is just in the state of Illinois. Once we show our profits here, we'll build prisons here. And then we'll have like this, they build them in all 50 states. That's $150 million in profit a year if they can duplicate what they were doing. You understand what I'm saying? So I can get it, but I would, and to be honest with you, I would be perfectly okay. Well, not perfectly okay. I'd be somewhat okay with them taking government money and doing it more efficiently. Even though I prefer for them to give the if they can run it at 7, then the government should give them 7, and then that's where they should leave it. But that's just my even a utopian way of looking at it, I guess.
Yeah, maybe there's some space in there to kind of do like what schools do and have some sort of like nonprofit or some sort of, I hate to use the word like oversight body because that's kind of like big government, but some sort of way to implement some accountability of the wardens of these private prisons or the people that hold these private prisons, so that people can't go to a public prison, get transferred, then all of a sudden they get good behavior, then they get easy parole just because they know somebody or they paid somebody off at a private prison.
Yeah. That is, like I said, that's always one of the dubious downsides of it. We got all these people because I think they showed somebody was trying to send me an article one time and they showed me the number of congressmen who invested in some of these private prison companies, and it's a large number that are invested in this type of stuff. And I think it's something to kind of keep an eye on and keep track of, because once again, if you get in trouble, it's like, yo, AJ, man, I might have to go to jail for 10 years. Heard you got that prison, heard you got that prison in Virginia. Yo.
Yeah, put me in the suite.
Can you put me in the wing, that we know exists? You know what I'm saying? Can you kind of put me in the kind of the from the Narcos? Can you put me in the Narcos El Chapo wing that has, correct. The one where you can bring in strippers and y'all are drinking champagne and I get cable TV and PlayStation, and I get to kind of do what I want to do. Like, yeah, can you put me in that wing? I ain't gonna be able to get out. I ain't gonna be able to be discharged, but can you put me in your prison? And I think that is, like I said, going to end up being the downfall of the private prison system. Is what's going to happen is some of these people are going to start going to jail for these white collar crimes, and like for example, take Michael Cohen. This guy is, I saw his profit, what he wasn't claiming, over the 5-year period that he wasn't convicted. I want to say he might have not claimed like $4 million that he didn't claim, right? But you got to think about, he didn't claim 4 million, right? So how much money did he claim? You understand what I'm saying? How much money was he making besides what he did, what he kind of snuck under the table is the question. So a situation where even if this guy had to go to jail for 3 years, like I say, he's in New York. Is he going to Rikers? Highly doubtful. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? Like, which jail is he going to? And if he ends up going to one of these private prisons that is kind of minimum security, they kind of get to walk around, play a little basketball, play a little baseball, go out in the community. They're the type that get to go out in the community and they only wear the prison uniform and the like reflective vest, because we know they're pretty much ain't got no. They're not gonna do anything. So
What
like
happened to Epstein?
you said, what now?
Doesn't he have some Jeffrey Epstein and the pedophile guy in Florida, the billionaire pedophile guy, the guy that was involved with all when all the Pizzagate stuff was going on?
I have no idea. I haven't heard.
Some kind of weird deal where he goes to prison. He sleeps in the prison at night, but then he's like he can go to his office or his house during the day or something. He has some, and this dude was like a pedophile for like 2 decades. I mean, this dude got all kinds of charges.
He only had to sleep in jail at night, so so it's almost like he reports to jail at night.
You just Google the guy and just read the article and you thank me later. I mean, it's just insane this deal that this guy got, and you want to talk about me too.
But is the prison he at? Is he at a private prison though? Or is he just at prison period and he just got
That's a good question. I have no idea, but I know he has some sort of, I mean, it might be more of a legal issue that he got some really good deal with drawing a good judge or something like that. And has some really good lawyers, but it's just his deal is just like, this is not justice. This is not justice for what this guy is doing. And it's like nobody's talking about. I mean, maybe it's a fake news thing where the media is purposely not talking about this blatant exploitation of of our legal system for somebody that's that's been convicted of committing some of the most heinous crimes that our society generally sees as, you talk about the levels of evil, right? Pedophilia, child sex trafficking, that kind of stuff is, that's pretty high up there, right?
That's
I think that's pretty bad. And this guy has a real cushy deal.
Well, money talks. So he bought what type of justice he could benefit from, as compared to just the average Joe. And I think private prisons are going to exploit that. I don't think you're going to get the same kind of justice if you have the profits to sway it in your favor, and you just label justice.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point too. That do we want to, or if the prisons are nicer, does that incentivize or de-incentivize people from committing crimes? Think about how prisons were 200 years ago. Getting sent to jail was a death sentence because there was no running water, there was no sanitation. You're gonna get cholera and die in prison, because it's a bunch of feces and human waste everywhere and stuff. But now, what if the private prison is down feather pillows and you're drinking Evian water, you know what I'm saying, and you're having gourmet meals and whatnot, and it's what's the
okay, wait, okay,
kind of scary,
Yeah. Okay, I see what you're talking about. Okay, I'm just gonna tell you what happened to him. He had a 53-page federal indictment. Okay, for basically he could end up spending the rest of his life in jail, but instead he served 13 months in the county jail, and they sealed the entire record so that nobody could come back and look at it. Like any of the victims that he claimed, all the emails, court documents, everything was sealed. So
and Bill Clinton has been on his private jet and stuff too.
Yeah, it's saying that I guess they're basically talking because the reason why I guess the guy who was over this trial, who was the district, who's the federal prosecutor, Acosta. Yeah, I think he's in the Trump cabinet right now. I think that's what I think that's the point of the article that they were trying to make. But he was Alexander Acosta was the
up on the screen.
Federal prosecutor. Go ahead.
I was saying, can you share it on the screen?
Yeah, I can. I just gotta pull it up.
Or just paste the link or something like that.
Yeah. Because I'm reading the Miami Herald. Yeah. I can pull it up real quick. But basically, what I'm looking at is just something that it basically goes back to that scary thing that we always are concerned about. Because I know I talked about it earlier about how you basically are looking at like when I went back and I looked at the criminal codes on the Michael Cohen case. Michael Cohen could have faced up to 65 years in jail if he got, those are maximum sentences, right?
Oh, max. Okay, if he got max.
But yeah, 65 maximum sentences. I mean, 65-year maximum sentence, but instead he's only got to serve 3. I think, and they're talking about how hard the judge went on him. I think that's a little different. Okay, so can everybody see the screen? Or is it cloudy, or does it look good? Okay. So right there, if you look right there, it says, in 2017, despite ample physical evidence, multiple witnesses corroborating the girl's story, federal prosecutor Epstein lawyers quietly put together a remarkable deal, who was then 54. He pleaded guilty to 2 felony prostitution charges. In exchange, he received immunity for federal sex trafficking that could have sent him to prison. And like I said, he served a 13-month in the private wing of the Palm Beach County Stockade.
Stockade.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but I mean, you got to think about it. Like, it's Palm Beach, right? So how bad is their county jail, really? I mean, if you had to serve like 13,
it's like the shittiest country club on Long Island.
Yeah, correct. So then it's a situation where I guess the guy Acosta, who was well, it says, I don't think he was over it, but he said the U.S. attorney in Miami, Alexander Acosta, was personally involved in negotiating records, letters, and emails. But I don't necessarily think he was like the district attorney or something in this case. So it's like, I guess he's the Secretary of Labor now. I don't know if that's true. But anyway, yeah, so that's what happened. So he got 13 months in the private wing of the Palm Beach, and everybody who had been labeled, who was technically a co-conspirator, anything that could have been in there, they also basically didn't really get anything. So yeah, like they said, it was a kind of a ridiculous story. That's his I guess his Palm Beach mansion or whatever the case may be.
This is like my servant's mansion.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty bad. I mean, if you start looking at what he's talking about, it says this girl right here is one of the 100 middle school, high school age girls that Palm Beach billionaire is accused of sexually assaulting. Yeah, so I think that's going to end up being the to me, in my opinion, that's going to be the fear for me when it comes to anytime you want to talk about a private prison is, and when you have people with a lot of money, are they going to really be able to basically escape justice because they know some good?
They're doing that now. Anyone with money, basically, well, except for Bill Cosby,
Correct.
For the most part, it's just simply 2 types of justice. So, if they're fluent, they get a particular type of justice as compared to, say, you and I and the everyday person. But yeah, with the private sector, private prisons, I think they're going to, and they probably, if that keeps continuing on in that particular fashion or it develops that way, it's going to be known as a system where the elite can have their justice and their time or whatever served under that particular umbrella, where they know you'll have the country club type setting. The time it won't be as harsh as being overlapped in the way the prisons are today.
And then on a side note, because just in case everybody forgot, Harvey Weinstein is still out of jail. Just in case everybody had forgot about that guy who everybody like to make a big deal out of, right? He still hasn't went to jail for anything. I don't even think he's went to trial. I think his plea now, or his whole thing is now he's basically saying it was all consensual, because basically if you have sex with me for a role, that's consensual sex. So that's basically the angle he's trying to take now. But he's still not in jail right now as we speak, when everybody talked about how big of a creep this dude is. But that's the reason why I say you have to start kind of looking at this stuff, and you don't want to take like Cordell would say, you don't want to take that leftist view and start pointing to race or anything, because Bill Cosby had money as well. But at the same time, it's a situation where women are coming out saying all the things Harvey Weinstein did to them, and a lot of the stories sound exactly the same, kind of sort of reminiscent of the Bill Cosby. So I'm not saying Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby are the same person, but if you want to compare stories, a lot of women want to have the same story. He roofied me and did stuff to me. all the things with Weinstein is he brought me to the hotel and he forced me to do something, or he asked me to do stuff, or he wanted to shower in front of me, whatever the case may be. He asked me to do creepy stuff in the hotel. They all the stories sound the same, but yet and still this man is still free, and yet and still he's not even front page news anymore.
Well, is Cosby actually doing time? Is he actually incarcerated, or?
I believe so. I mean, they're trying to say Bill Cosby was blind, and I think his lawyers were trying to do some sort of injunction because they claim he's blind now. They claim he can't see. I don't know if that's true, but I remember they had claimed Bill Cosby was blind and that he didn't have good health.
Yeah, blind people go to jail just to hope, but
huh?
I know what. Yeah, I assume that he did that. Well, I'm not saying that he isn't blind, but I'm sure not to stray off the topic too much. I think that may be a part of his strategy, possibly. Because people with all kinds of health conditions can go to prison. Like you were talking about odds, the guy's in a wheelchair or whatever, that kind of thing. So, yeah, it doesn't deter them from not getting sentencing. But I guess being Cosby, I guess he assumed, I'm up in my years. I have all of these issues medically, and I'm Cosby, so I need to get a break here. But yeah, in comparison to Weinstein, yeah, it's exactly the same kind of pattern as far as the molestation or sexual abuse and things are concerned, but just two different outcomes.
Gotcha. Well, what I'm gonna do is because we're about to say we push about the hour and 45-minute mark, so I'm gonna go ahead and kind of wrap things up. I kind of give everybody a last word. They have anything else they want to say, but yeah, I'm gonna kind of go ahead and wrap the show up right here. We appreciate Uncle Tommy hosting everything, on the last show before Christmas. And, we appreciate everyone else who came in with their input tonight. If anybody else has any last words or anything.
Does everybody have a safe and solid and happy Christmas? Merry Christmas.
Yeah, not happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and you heard it there from Uncle Tommy. So, like I said, as far as on Monday, like I said, we won't be doing the Monday show until the new year. So I will see you again probably next Thursday. And like I said, I'll see you the first Monday in the new year to redo my show that will no longer be blocked because I found a way to fight against the machine, and it's going to be real different. So I will see y'all in the new year. Yeah, it really bothered me because we're gonna talk about that a little bit. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and end things right now. Everybody have a safe, happy.